To record audio, I must have 2 or more callers. I guess that's working as well. All right. So, some of the stuff I showed you very, very briefly the other day was around what users can do in order to update their roles or their profiles. So there's a transaction, and it was mentioned in my set of documents. It's SU3. Now, this is something that most users get, and I want to just bounce this over by you because sometimes we turn it off so that people can't mess with their user profile. And I'll explain to you what sort of capabilities you have here. So the first thing is the basic information that is set up when we create a user, and you'll see how that ties in. We'll go through, and I'll have you create a dummy user so that you can see how we assign roles, etc. So first thing is just the user ID information, who owns it, a few little things like that. Not some people are really, really good about filling up this information. Most people pretty much leave it to this. Sometimes I put an email address in here, but even that they don't really use. Then on the defaults tab is where you define how your decimal notation is going to look like, how your date format is going to look like, whether you're going to use a 12-hour 12-hour clock or a 24-hour clock, and then also the output devices that are assigned to your system. Now, our basis guys haven't set up these printers. This is something we need to get Larry to do. I was looking at this a couple of days ago. They only have this LP01, which is the default printer, but they should also have LPT1 available to you as well, which would then go to your default Windows printer.
Okay.
So that is something that we need to get them to set up so that you can have LPT1 defined over here. And then what you define in this box here is how you want output spool to be handled. Do you want it to be printed immediately, which is typically what you would want to do if you're going to print it out to hard copy? And then you want to delete that spool once it's done. You don't want to just keep it saved there the entire time.
Yeah. I'm getting some text from Cheryl. Yeah, she's saying that she doesn't think she has enough bandwidth to make this work. And then she said that she's there until Sunday, so she's wondering if we could have the call with her basically sometime next week.
Okay, let's schedule for. Just let me check. I have a standing weekly call with Japan.
Yeah, I can't remember. Was it Monday nights were bad for you? Was it Tuesday night was okay, or?
With the new year, it's become a bit of a mess. Give me 1 second. I'm just looking at my. Crap. Let me just check and see what they've done, because we've had to reshuffle stuff because of all the New Year's comings and goings. Today's the 6th. Okay, we're back to Tuesday. So Monday I'm available. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday I'm available.
Okay. Why don't we plan on maybe Wednesday? So like Wednesday at 6. Is that usually what works for you?
Yep, that works fine. Okay, let's put it. We'll put it on.
Okay. Yeah, I told her that, and I can plan on sending out something after the call as kind of a placeholder. So.
Okay, and I'll send out an invite, a join me invite as well.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Okay. And then finally, what you can do over here is determine where the user's time zone is, opposed to the system time zone. So if you're working in Pacific Standard Time, you can specify that as well. So that's really your system user defaults. Then we get to this wonderful thing called parameters. These things are all over the map. And if you do a search on user parameters, you'll see there are thousands and thousands of them. And they drive everything from what your HCM user group is to what your default country code is, as well as if you're running queries, whether you're using the global queries or the local query info sets, etc., etc. So there's quite a lot of stuff over here, and I'll spend some time with you in more detail on this. Typically, though, the ones that are important to HR users are MOLGA, which is your country code. So, for example, anybody that would be working for on the contracts, for example, your project managers, their default MOLGA, which is, I don't know what MOLGA means, but it's been with SAP for forever. That's the country code. Your project managers will be working in MOLGA 99. And then your user group is your SAP HR user group, and most everybody here is in user group 10. So those are some of the things that you can set up, and then there are a bunch of other weird and wonderful parameters that you can set, which basically define what you see and how your user is set up. As I said, most companies allow employees to update their own user profiles, but there are a bunch of folks that say, okay, because, for example, in some instances, SAP HR transaction access is driven by these user groups and MOLGA accesses. They lock people's ability down to update that and leave it with the SAP administrator group. So this is just something I just want you to think about. I think we can leave it as it is right now, letting people update their own profiles. But if you decide to lock it down, it's pretty easy to do that.
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay, so that's that piece of it. Now I'm going to go through some basic security transactions here that you need to I think have access to. The first one is transaction SU01. What this allows you to do is to create users, lock them, edit them, reset passwords, etc., etc. So, for example, let's say Cheryl had forgotten her password, right? What you would do there is put in her user ID over here, click on this button over here, and that'll change her password and basically set her up with a new initial password, and then she would be able to sign in, enter the initial password, and reset it to whatever it needs to be, and move on ahead. SAP used to have a default. It's always a good idea for you to define the default initial password. Most SAP basis consultants use initpass, short for initial password. Sometimes I try to bring a bit of levity into the thing, and if somebody's forgotten their password, I reset their initial password to amnesia. Whatever you choose. Welcome is a standard one as well. There's a bunch of different options. So that is the button that you use to change a password. If you have somebody that you want to lock out of the system for whatever reason, it may be because of an upgrade, it may be because of all kinds of things. Maybe you just don't want them in the system anymore, and the process of letting them go. All you do is have to click on this, and then say, okay, lock it, and then her user ID is locked. And you'll see at the bottom of the screen that it's locked. And to unlock it is simply a case of unlocking it. That's pretty straightforward. If you have a user that you want to replicate, let's say Cheryl gets a sidekick, and you want to create a new user, all you really need to do is copy it to new HCM user, and you can define what you want to copy, and basically you should do all of these things, except potentially the easy access settings, but it's fine just to copy everything over. Click on the copy icon, and it takes a little while to do this. And we're going to mess around with this HCM user now, so that you can see what is available. So it's created a new user. You give it a new password, INIT PASS. If you want to assign them to different user groups, we don't worry about that here. That's usually for larger organizations where you define user groups for production planning or logistics or sales and distribution, etc. We don't really have to worry about that. So I just made it init pass over there, and then you can look at some of the other stuff. The parameters that we talked about earlier. These are the parameters that you saw in system SU in transaction SU3. Okay, so we can say as we build this now, we can say, okay, this person here is also going to have Mulga 99 and is going to be part of user group 10. Okay. The roles that are assigned, everything that was assigned to Cheryl would be copied over, so the HR generalist role. We'll spend some time looking at the way these are set up as well in a little while. Profiles, you don't have to worry about. What the profiles are SAP-generated user profiles that are derived from the roles that you see on the role tab. Groups, you don't need to worry about. Personalization, you really don't need to worry about at this point. The license data is the standard SAP license that has been assigned to the system. Basically, everybody's an operational user. You don't have to worry about any of these things. We don't have an APO defined. You don't have to worry about enterprise HR users. You can just leave that to default as well. Address, you saw that before. That is the same as you saw in SU3 rather, transaction SU3, just the basic user data. Of course, all it did here was create a copy from the user ID. So if this is Joe Blogs, you can update that over there. The logon data you saw already. The SNC, don't have to worry about that. I don't even know what it stands for. I'm not that good in systems guy. And then, of course, security guy. And then, of course, the defaults that you saw before. So everything else has been replicated. And once you've done that, you save it, and you've got a new user ID. Takes a little while to build this, so not exist. Oh, there we go. So
yeah, that looks handy. I can see where, because I think the few that I've been creating, I would just create from scratch, but I can see where copying that would be nicer.
Yeah, for the most part, when you have a project manager, they're going to have pretty much the same roles. The big thing that you need to think about from an HCM perspective, and we'll dig into this next. So you've got roles which determine what you're allowed to do, right? And then there's this notion called structural authorization, which determines what parts of the organization you can see, which is going to become key, and we'll get to that next. So this copy was copying from a model user. You can also create one from scratch by clicking on the create button. Now you've got to go through all of these things and build the entire thing from scratch. So obviously, if you can replicate stuff, your life is going to become a lot easier. But the copying from scratch again here, you'd start building from the left-hand tab and moving on. So defining the logon data, and really the only thing with logon data you have to worry about is the new password. If you want to use this wizard, it'll generate a password for you. And that's what it looks like.
Wow.
So then you copy it and send it over to them. We don't have that secure an environment that we have to worry about creating 23-character complicated passwords. So I would give that piece a miss. Defaults again. This is the system default. You'll notice here the system default is the SAP European default. You would then have to go and change it to decimal points, thousands, commas, and then your date format to be US date format for those that are US users. Parameters we talked about. Roles, of course, now you have a blank screen. Let's just talk about the way the roles are defined. When you look at roles, you see we have an option of either single roles or composite roles. Composite role is nothing more than a whole bunch of single roles that are bunched together. All the composite roles that I've defined in the SAP system start with BE. B just stands for business roles. E, I don't know where I started with it, but it's been like that for forever. BE asterisk. These are the composite roles that we've defined, which are the business roles, right? Your project manager, your generalist, your HR manager, which is just a regular employee who's got people reporting into them, the organizational management users, and then finally the HRS team, which would be you. As soon as I add role, all of the composite, all of the single roles that belong to that role are added into it as well. So the project manager role includes all of these SAP roles, which are the C projects roles, plus the ability to maintain qualifications. Okay, so just by adding the business role, I've included in the view all of these guys here. You can tell what a composite role is if it's got these two bubbles assigned to them here. That's a composite role. If it's a single role, it only has the one circle with the quadrants on it. So adding roles is pretty straightforward, as you can see. If I wanted to build my roles, I'm going to just delete all these quickly, and I'll show you this quickly as well. If I want to build it off of a reference user, right, I could often go and find Colin's role. Forgive me on this one. Reference users, what you can do is you can create specific reference users that you could use as building blocks. None of those have been created at this point. But if we had created Cheryl as a reference user, and you put her in here, it would take all the roles that she had and copy them in.
Okay.
I find that using the copy function does the job just as well. User groups, again, we don't have to worry about. The personalization, we don't have to worry about, etc. So that's creating your user from scratch. Notice you do get error messages. I didn't give the user a last name. It's a required field. So you'd have to say, put a last name in here, but I'm not going to save this one anyway. So I'm just going to get out of this. Finally, if you wanted to edit the one that we just copied and assign a new role perhaps, so this was new HCM user, Joe Bloggs as user. I want to add some roles, and I want to say, okay, you're going to get the BE manager role as well. Oh, it's just another thing that I do with my naming convention, David. I define by functional area as well. So business role, business area. I mean, there's a business role. It's for an HR business role, and this is for an HR. This doesn't mean it's for an HR manager. It's a manager, a manager of people, if you want to call it that. In fact, I call it manager of people. So, and somebody who is in charge of a bunch of other folks.
Okay.
Okay. So, in this particular instance, Cheryl you probably find this duplication over here. In our particular instance, there is, so this becomes redundant. But you don't want regular HR employee managers to be able to mess around with the org structure, for example. You don't, so they get the display of the org structure, but they don't get to maintain it. They get to display employees' non-sensitive information, but not their sensitive information. They get to maintain non-sensitive data for their employees, and then they can perform, in this particular instance, and this we have to determine with Cheryl whether we want them to do this, employee actions. In some organizations, you're allowed to fire your employees as a manager, some people not. I would propose that we don't do it in this particular instance. But that's a discussion we've got to have with Cheryl. So I'm going to just undo or not save what I did, so I'm just X out of here. And now HCM users got all those roles. So that talks to your ability to do certain things. Right? Now the other thing we talked about was maybe some people should only see certain parts of the organization. This is handled by the process called structural authorizations. So there are two transactions for this. OOSP allows you to define the structural authorizations that you need to put in place. So we'll start with that. I have not done any of this yet in QA, so we're building this from scratch. I'll show you a little bit of how this works. So in order to update structural authorization, you create a profile, you give it a name, and then you define the profile by highlighting the field over here, double-clicking on the authorization profile, and basically what this says is, in this particular instance, you can see all planned versions of the organization, you can see all object types. So basically, you can see everything. Okay? What I'm going to do here is I'm going to create one just for just this person here is only going to, for the purpose of this exercise, is only going to be able to see the crowdsourcing people. Okay? So I'm going to create a new entry. We'll call it crowdsourcing. Okay. Find that, hit enter. And then we want to define what areas of the organization this crowdsourcing person is allowed to look at. So I double click on authorization profile, and we're going to create one from scratch. Did I not save it? So there it is. And what you do here is you say, you define what elements of the organization you can see. This is just a sequence number. We only want them to see active employees. or active organizational structures. So if you look in here, you want to use the current plan. We're going to go starting from a specific organizational unit. And what we need to do now is I'm going to open up a new session. So /O for new session, right? PP OSE. Double click on crowdsourcing so I can see what the organization number is. And it's 11. So it's organizational unit 000000011. And I want them to be able to maintain people or objects within that so that they can edit information, etc. The notion of evaluation path is an interesting one. I'm going to go starting at the organizational unit. That's O. I'm going to go from the organizational unit through positions, which are S's, to eventually get to people. We can spend a little bit more time talking about evaluation paths, but this is typically the one that you'll use in 99% of cases when you're building these structural authorizations. Your status vector is going to be 1 and 2. If I click help on this, it'll explain to you what they are. So you want to be able to look at active and planned, so future dated relationships. So you're always going to have 1 and 2 for your vectors. What depth allows you to do is limit how far down the organizational hierarchy you're going to allow this person to go. We're going to leave the depth at 0, which says basically you can go all the way down. We're going to ignore the sign. We're going to ignore period. We're going to let them see everything, the entire organizational structure, without any time limitations. In some particular instances, you might say, okay, I only want you to be able to see from current date onwards. Or I only want to be able to see everything for the current year. Or I only want to see future, which is actually today and beyond. But we let them look at the entire organization. And function module, we don't have to worry about. What a function, there's some certain function modules here that allow you to define, and we will build this for the managers, but I haven't done it yet. You can set it up so that managers can only see, well, I'll show it here, but we won't do it for this particular instance. There's a function module called RH_get org manager, and what that'll do is it'll look at your user ID, figure out who you are, get to your position, figure out what organizational unit you're in, and if you're the manager of that organizational unit, it's not get org managers, it's just RH_get manager. It'll allow you to see everything from the organizational unit that you manage and below. So that's what this functional module goes to, but we're not going to worry about that. We've actually explicitly defined the organizational unit that they're allowed to look at. So we'll just save this. If we go back to the organizational profiles, if I click on this info button over here, it'll actually show me what this person is allowed to see. And he can see everything. And these are all of the objects within it. So as this grows, obviously this his access to the organization will grow as well. So he can see everything from Object ID 11, all the positions within it, all the people within it, P is for people, and all the positions, all the positions within that organizational unit. So what we're going to do in a second is we're going to sign on as that guy, and you'll see when he looks at his organizational structure what he's in fact allowed to see. So why don't we do that now quickly? So you're going to sign on as, was it HCM user?
Or was it new HCM user?
I think you're right, as new HCM user. And init pass. It prompts me for a new password. We'll call it NEUPASS, new pass. And these are all the transactions he has available to him. If we go back to SAP user, he gets this. Now watch what happens. So he goes into PPOSE, and let's do a structural search by position.
Did we assign him to that? I know we created that.
Damn. We didn't assign it to anybody. Good catch, thank you. So we created the role. Now we've got to assign it to somebody. You did right. Transaction for that is transaction 00, again, Oscar, SB. So we have OSP to create it, and OSB to define it. So now, what this shows me is this user ID SAP star is default to all. So what this actually does is it says, if I don't have a structural role assigned to me, I can see the entire organization. Well, that's clearly a dangerous thing to have set up, right? So, because that would mean that anybody would be able to see anything in the entire organization from an HR perspective. So what we'll do is we will change that SAP star to something else. And what we'll give them is basically something similar to the manager role that I talked about, where you can only see everybody, yourself and everybody that reports into you. So if you don't have anybody reporting to you, obviously you'd only see yourself. As soon as you do have people reporting into you, you can see their information as well. You can search here if you want to. We know it's new HCM user now. There it is, Joe Blogs. And we're going to give him the crowdsourcing role. And he can have that starting today. So, starting today to the end of time, 12/31/9999. So you can set people up in advance if you wanted to. And we'll save that. We know back. Now HCM's got the crowdsource user. Now, because he's already logged in, I actually need to go and reset his authorizations. So first thing we're going to do here is sign out as him. I believe this is him. So that's me. That's him. Let's log out. So there's a program you have to be able to execute in order to make this happen. And the program, to execute a program, is transaction SE38. This is also something you're going to have to develop some knowledge of as well. SE38 allows you to execute a program. The program we're going to run is RHBAUS00. And we're going to do it specific for him, HCM user. Oopsie. F8 to execute. And Actually, it didn't look as though we had to regenerate his index for his structural authorization. Had we had to regenerate his structural authorization index, he would have had his user ID come up, and then the number of objects that he was now entitled to look at. So he looks as though he's okay. We're going to, it's always good practice to do it regardless though. And we're going to sign in as NEUWHCM user, and his password was NEWPAFX. And let's have a look at PP. See, the only thing you can see now is the crowdsourcing group.
Okay.
Okay? So this is the sort of thing, for example, if you want to limit Colin to only seeing the contractors he's allowed to see, plus perhaps his employees, if he has people reporting into them, that would be the only group of employees that he'd have visibility to.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, now this addresses a question that Mark had put out a while ago. How do you limit who can see what? So this is one of the good ways the SAP provides us to do that. So in this particular instance, he's got the full HCM user capabilities. He can create organizational units. He can create jobs. He can do whatever he needs to do. He will not be able to create jobs. Because he can only, if you remember what we talked about, you can see everything from organizational units to position to person. So he has access to P003 to create jobs, but he will not actually be able to edit any of those jobs because they're not in the structural authorization plan. So if we try to update a job over here, you see it says no values for the selection at the bottom?
Yeah.
He's not allowed to mess with jobs because it's not included within the structural authorization profile.
Okay.
If we wanted to allow him to mess around with jobs, and again, it's something I don't believe you want to do. This is something that should stay, and I would propose that it would stay with you and Cheryl, so that it is at least controlled. You don't want people messing with it. He'd be able to assign jobs to it, but he would not be able to edit them or play with them in any way, shape, or form. Make sense?
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. So that addresses the structural authorization. So two major elements to security: what you can do, and then to whom in the organization you can do this. And that typically allows you to take care of most HR authorizations in the majority of companies. There are other elements as well, but we don't have to worry about those. There's a context-specific authorization as well that we have not turned on, and that really comes into play again where there's all kinds of weird and wonderful logistics and material management and finance functions, where you can allow people to do certain things only if, as part of executing a specific transaction, for example. A little bit complicated to implement, and not the juice really isn't worth the squeeze for us at this point. So that covers the security aspects of it. What I wanted to go through with you was the way in which the mass load works, and what we would need to do in order to. Well, before we do that, is there anything else you wanted to touch on from a security perspective?
I mean, nothing I can think of right now. So, yeah, I mean, I guess what you mentioned about the mass load sounds good.
Okay. We're going to run the mass load using a transaction called LSMW. which stands for Legacy System Migration Workbench. And I've just signed in as a new HCM user. So let's get out of his user ID right now. LSMW, Legacy System Migration Workbench. And the one that I created was one called Hire Contractor. If you like, I'll walk you through the creation of an LSMW. It's actually not the most painful thing in the world.
I'm sure.
It does cover many, many steps. So essentially all it does is it takes the spreadsheet that you sent us and replicates a whole transaction. So I'll show you how this one was set up. So you really start from one step and you just keep on powering through. So the first piece of it is how are we going to build this? And we've done this using a recording, and the recording was called Hire Contractor. I'll show you what the recording looks like. Doesn't look like a heck of a lot right now, but essentially what each of these screens here is the screen within the hiring process. So the first one here, MP00, is the action screen. So we can see there's a hire. There's a specific reason for action. Input type 2. You can tell what the input type is by looking at the first 4 characters here. Personal data. Then it does input type 1, which is your organizational assignment. Input type 6, your address information, etc., etc. So it just keeps on powering right through it. So we're going to build one just from scratch, just for fun. Because what I ended up doing, in order to try and accommodate the fact that we don't have all of those screens, all of the fields for the contractors available to us, we are going to have to create sort of an abridged contractor record. So let's start building this from scratch. So right now we want to create a new one. Before we do that, I want to go back one step. I just want to set a default here. Double click to change my process rather than just to display it. All right, we're going to create a new one. So we're going to create a brand new. Sorry, I've got to go back one step. I keep on forgetting to do this. We'll call the contractor load. Basically, you're going to go through each one of those steps that are on the list. So we're going to create a new recording. And it says, what am I going to do? Well, we're going to do a contractor load. So we'll call it and what transaction we're going to execute transaction PA40. And really all we're doing at this point is recording the contractor load transaction. So the transaction we're going to execute is activate contractor. We'll hire somebody starting today. We should just start them tomorrow. Find that position. Now, this is one of the things I mentioned to you earlier in the email. The file that you sent me didn't have any zip codes. For US-based contractors, it's going to require that.
Yeah, I did. I sent a new one. Oh, I think it might have been yesterday with the correct.
Okay, I saw the email come in. I didn't get to look at it though.
One thing I wasn't sure about is that, let's just, and I don't know if this would happen or not, but like, does it validate where? And I wondered more about with the foreign ones where, I mean, obviously, like the zip code is whatever they're putting in, and I didn't know how much validation was going on. Whether, say that the zip code for Ridgewood, New Jersey was not a valid one. I mean, I didn't know if that would cause a problem or if it just takes whatever zip code they put in.
So there is validation. Depending on the geography, the validation could be a little bit more or less detailed as need permits. The U.S. validation is actually pretty good in that it at least makes sure that you've got them in the right state. So
okay.
If I would have put in the Virginia zip code here, it would kick it out and say it was invalid.
Okay.
To that level, it is pretty good. For Canada zip codes, for example, it just makes sure that it's letter, number, dash, number, or the other way around. I can never remember. It starts with a letter and ends, or it starts with a number. So different levels of validation depending on where you are. Okay, so we put this in. We're not keeping contractor payment method, so we're going to bypass that. We are going to put an email address, right? And then their specifications. That's the day that they came into the company. We'll plug that in there. We're not going to use candidate ID. That only comes in when we hire through recruiting. So arrow past that. And I believe that pretty much covers it for the contractors. So we've run a little recording now, and we've loaded one guy in. So now we can green arrow back from here. Next step you do when you're building this LSMW is to decide what fields you're actually going to be using. First thing I do is I default all of these screens, all of these fields. What SAP does is it evaluates what each of these fields are over here and creates a field name that we're going to be using as we build our LSMW. EINDA is your entry date. This select underscore 7, I'll show you where it derived that from in a minute. It basically means that we chose the 7th item in the actions list, which was the hire contractor, and plugged it in there. So
Okay.
Defaulted that. I'll just save this. Actually, I'll show you quickly. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, activate contractor. So it's just a position-based selection of the action we were choosing. So it says take select 7 and default it to an X. Okay, so we've done that. We can save this. We can green arrow back. So now we've created this cont load recording over here. Green arrow back from there. And we're actually going to say, okay, that's the one we're going to use. So if I do a search now, F4, it's over there. I define it, save it. So that's the recording we're running against for the rest of time. Next step, maintain source structures. Essentially, all you do is here you create the button, give it a name. If you give it exactly the same name as what you had before, it doesn't allow it. Okay, so typically what I do here is I give it preface it by structure, so at least I know that that's the structure for it. But I try to keep it in line with the name of the recording that I've created.
Okay.
Okay, that's just the naming convention thing that I use. Maintain source fields. Now we've got to start thinking about all the fields we need to enter in for this. So what you do is you see there's a structure here. We start at the very beginning. So now what is a good practice to do is actually go through, do another activation of a contract to the side, so you can make sure you have the right fields that you need to put in. Okay? So we're going to execute a new hire. And reason for action is going to be a constant. We're not going to mess with that. Position is obviously important, right? So we've got to put a position here. So if I do this, click help, click on that wrench over there, it'll actually tell me what the name of that position is. Okay, PLANS. I can then put it in there. It's a character field. It is 8 characters long. The extent to which you keep this to be in line with SAP standard names is up to you. You can call it really whatever you want. It is going to be what determines, what drives the naming convention of the field headers that get loaded. Or rather, the field levels in the load file. So let's create a position, put a position in here. Now, everything else is defaulted, so we don't have to put any more information in there, right? And we know we're going to default this to U1. So the only field we have to enter in, or we have to get in the load, is the position number. So we'll save this. Last name and first name we're going to need. So we'll last name, N-A-C-H, Nachnaam. Character, you have 25 characters for this.
So in that template that you had given me, we're gonna, like, after we create all these positions, we're gonna have to put those position numbers in the template. Is that how it works?
Yeah, that's
okay.
where the fun begins.
Okay.
Okay, so last name, first name. This we don't have to worry about. The system is going to give all this, so we don't have to even put that in. We've already given it the position. It's going to do that regardless. It'll delimit the vacancy. Address, obviously we need that, right? Again, if you want to get the actual name, Help, Ranch, Straße. City. I'm not going to give it actual names now. It really doesn't matter at this point. Sorry, 25. Date. Good. All these poor guys that live in the same house. It's kind of sad. Country. We're not using this. We don't have phone number information for the load, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yes, so we'll skip that. We're not loading that. We are doing this. The characters were there. So now we've abbreviated it quite a lot compared to what we had before. And then finally this. Date 1 is original hire date. Now we're going to just default these to be all the same. Candidate's ID we're not using. So as you see, the number of fields has dropped a lot from what we had before. But we can doctor the file pretty quickly to get that.
Okay.
Alrighty. So we defined our structure now. And basically that gives us the file layout that we're going to use. Green arrow back. And of course we want to save this. So you've maintained the source field. Now, I don't know if you noticed, but the LSMW takes you step by step through what you need to do. Structure relationships basically just says this is one we just saved. It just connects the structure we built to the recording. Just need to save that. Field mapping and conversion rules are huge. Basically looks at every single field that we entered and determines, now we're going to decide what we want to put in here. So the entry date is going to be the date of our load. This is something we're going to have to go in and edit. Or will we? Yeah, this is the load date. So this is going to become a constant field. And that's going to be, we're going to make that today. Actually, we'll make it 01/01/14. And maybe we'll just decide that that's going to be our entry date regardless. Select 7 is going to be also a constant field. Oops, excuse me. There's also going to be a constant, and the constant field for that, you get a choice. Is obviously, well, not obviously, but it's going to be that. So that says choose the action that we chose, right, that we wanted to work with. Begin date and end date we don't actually have to worry about because it comes from this field over here. So that is the date of the action. The action type we don't have to worry about because that's defined by this. So we don't have to worry about the action type. The reason for action is always going to be constant, so we'll create a constant for that. And it's going to be U1 because for our purposes it's a brand new position. This is going to come from our file. So in this particular instance, you've got to assign a source field to that, and that's going to be position. Perner stays blank. Personnel area is defined from the position. Employee group is defined from the position. Subgroup is defined from the position. Last name is clearly important. Comes from there. First name. Comes from first name. Personnel sub-area comes from the position. So does payroll area, so does job, so does organizational units. This came from Schaas 1 from there. City came from, we called it city in our file. State came from that. Warns us that the source field is longer than the target field. That's okay. It will truncate. Zip code comes from zip code. And so we're just slowly building up the mapping from our data file into the actual fields that we're using.
Okay.
Okay, land, country. And finally, user ID. Oops. Comes from there. Each of the following fields are all going to come from the same field on the file. Now, I didn't actually assign a source field to that, so I've got to go back and put that in. Now, you notice when we built it, you've got a date type and the date for the date type. So I'm going to go back to this guy's PA30, PA20, doesn't really matter. And we're going to look at his date specifications. Date type is this, and that's the original hire date. Now, what we're going to do with that, let me quickly go to your email. Because you actually had an original hire date for all of these guys, and we're going to use that. What we're going to have to do, though, is we're going to have to create an additional structure for that so that we can move it in. So we called it this. And we will use that name from the file. So all I'm going to do now, so that's the original hire date. So if we go here, sorry, where am I? Oh, there we go. So this becomes a constant, right? It's going to be U1, and if we search it, we get a list of all the different possible date types that exist, and there's going to be original hire date, and they're all, for the purpose of the load, going to have the same value. So we're going to now one thing, if I look for it here, I don't see that on my file, so I've got to go back and create a source field. So we'll just save what we have so far. Green arrow back. Go back to our source structures over here. Source fields. And we'll just add one in here. Uh, 10 characters is fine. There it is. You'll notice that the positioning of the fields in this file doesn't make any difference. You'll see that when we define the actual load. Oops, what have I done? There we go. Save this. Green arrow back. Now, if I go back to my field mappings and again, that warning just says that because the target field is only 8 characters, I created a 10-character field. It's not a big deal. This becomes a constant again, and this is going to be U2. And this is going to have the same field. So we're going to move the same field every time. Just acknowledge it. This becomes constant again, U3. And last but not least, you come from there. All right, so now we've done our mapping of our source file into this. This maintaining of fixed values we don't have to worry about. We can just get out of there. We have no fixed values at this point, so we're okay. Specifying our files. Okay. So what I'm going to do with this, I'm going to save this.
Yeah, so you may want to get rid of some of the ones that didn't have the address. And like you had mentioned, we don't necessarily need to load. I don't know. There was 4,000 or 5,000 in one of these files.
Yeah, we won't do them all. So we absolutely. So let's put in a filter here, and we certainly are. I don't think we want to do more than a couple. So let's just get rid of the starters, just so you can see how it works. Because we're going to have to make sure we have positions for all these guys, right? So let's just take, we got a file, save as, Appen, LSMW, SAP, CSUS, .csv. Oops. Sorry, and I want to make it a CSV file. Okay. And let's just do the where's my filter? It must be a little bit up to the right. All these guys. Okay. So now one of the things you'll notice that we don't have to worry about, even though this file has a lot more fields than we need, we're going to be okay. Now, if I recall, this is called Perner, start date, position we've got to do, Nachnaam, Vornaam, per ID. We didn't put in, but because we don't always use it, right? However, we don't have it as a required field. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the LSMW and I'm going to put that in. City, state, zip, all of these other things we don't really care about. User ID we have. So we've got all of the information we need at this point to do those loads. Okay, so let's close this. And go back to LSMW again. All right, let's specify those files. So it's going to be on the PC front end. And we called it I'm not going to do it that way. It'll take forever. C documents Appen LSMW. Oops. LSMW. Yeah. And here it becomes important. We've got comma-separated files. We have field names at the start of the file. The field does not match the source structure definition, so we turn that off. Okay. And we defined our file. We need to assign that file now. So conf load goes to the structure. Click create instead of save. Now, if we read our data, it's going to read that file. I need to just make sure I'm out of it, because if I have it locked. It's going to fight with me. I'm out of it. It says that not all field names on the file itself are defined in the source fields. And we noticed that, right? We have a lot more. And it's read 9 records, it wrote 9 records. It just gives a little history of what was done. And then I can display my data that was read. And if I click on that, you can see all the fields that were populated. Now, I noticed here that city wasn't defined, state wasn't defined, zip doesn't look correct.
I wonder, maybe the names are different for city and state?
That's exactly what we need to confirm, right? So, address 2. So, typically what I do here, Control-Shift-Y, what that allows you to do is copy. So what I do in that kind of situation is I go back here, paste what I had there, Control-C, Alt edit space, value transpose. Get rid of that junk. And let's see what I've got. So this one I know is correct. Plants was correct. Nachname is correct. Vorname is correct. Straße.
Does it matter that is it case sensitive? Yeah.
I don't believe it does.
I think that locat must be address 2.
That is actually city. Locat is address 2. So you go there. City goes there. State goes there. That is correct. Land 1 is correct. And user ID long, so we've confirmed that those are all good. Let's just delete that junk. Oopsie. User ID long we have. And those are all going back to that Ein.dot field, so we're good with those, right? If you remember, the mapping for those came back to this field over here. Now that data doesn't look right any longer, so we're going to have to fix that. And the reason for that is this is got defined as a general field.
Okay.
Right, so that's going to cause us a problem. Right, so usually all I do in those, and the other thing was some of these zip codes, 377, these zip codes are all good. Sometimes if you get like New Jersey is a prime case, right? 07481, if this is defined as a general field, you will lose that, just like what happened here. One of the things when we had created saved as a CSV file, we didn't make sure that these were defined as text fields. So, unfortunately, once it's hit this, there's nothing you can do nicely in Excel to put those leading zeros in. In this particular instance, it's not that difficult because there are not that many. But often, what happens when you've got thousands and thousands of these, the only trick that I've figured out to make this work is, and it's a pain, if length of U is equal to 5, then if length of U is equal to 5, then U, else, U. It's not actually bad form just to make sure all your things are text fields. Where's text? There. All right. And I've copied them back. I can delete this again. All right. The other thing that we haven't done yet is we haven't assigned positions to all these people. So that was a miss on my part, so we'll fix that quickly. You'll notice here your personnel IDs, and we'll come back and take care of these guys in a sec as well, in LSMW. We don't have positions.
Do they need to not have the dash?
It doesn't matter.
Oh, okay.
It'll take it regardless. As long as you've got 9 digits. Now this guy here, yeah. We'll be fine in all of those. So let's go back to this. Do I have a PPOME open up anywhere? There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. As it is, we have 7 positions, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 positions required. So let's quickly. Where am I here? RSP. Oh, I'm in display, so I couldn't create them. Now, when you're in PPOSE and you want to go back to your ME, if you have that capability, you can just click on this icon here, and it'll change it to PPOME right away. So just a little trick there, and we'll create We'll create 3 copies of this quickly. Save them. Okay, so we have 14, 15, 16. Let's start plugging those in. Now, one of the things when it comes to building this organizational structure for the load, if we're smart with this, we will we'll put these numbers in. We'll create them in sequence, so we can just have them trickle down without having to do it manually, because otherwise we'll be here all night doing that kind of thing. And then one.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Because we don't have the capability to copy the way we do with although I have a thought, maybe we can do something. 20000101 1920. Okay, so we've got positions assigned to these guys. All these headers should work now. Let's save this. Close it. And now we don't have to go. All we need to do at this point is just read the data one more time. Again, not all fields are there. That's okay. So 12 record this time. And green arrow back. Let's display the data that we read.
As I say, it must have picked up I know you added some blank lines at the bottom. It must have picked that up.
Yeah. That's okay. All right, now let's see what we've got. We've got the hire date, we've got their position, name, address, user ID. This was not on the file to be read, which is okay, because we're going to move that in when we convert it to this.
And what about I think the only other one was the social. Were we going to add that?
Yeah, let's quickly do that. So we go back to our source fields over here. We've got to create a source field. PRID. And they give us 11 characters in case of the dash. Now, we just got to go back to our object attributes for this one because I don't know that I think we had it there. I just want to make sure we do. So we've got to come all the way back to here. Go back to this load over here. And if I look at info type 2, if you notice here, I don't have social security number in this list, so I've got to add that. So I'm in display right now. I want to edit this. And I want to add a screen field to this. And it gives us a list of all of the things in the fields in the info type. And we want to look for per ID. There we go. So it's added it there for us. And what we'll do here is we'll default this to per ID. This value here was what was entered in the recording, so we don't have to worry about that. If you remember when we did the recording, that was the data we plugged in. We didn't put this per ID there, but it's included in my screen now, so we're all good. And go back to our field mappings now. And we should see here that per ID is included. So you can always go back and change it once you've done the recording. You do need to be a little bit careful, but SAP doesn't really let you screw up, as you notice.
Okay.
Okay. Now, we do need to then, once you've maintained these values, it's just good practice just to go back and specify those files one more time from the point where you left off. You don't have to mess with the recording any longer. None of that stuff is required, really. But it's a good idea just to do that. Let's read the file one more time. Okay, we've got many more rec fields in our file than we need. We've read them all. Let's display what we read. Display the whole batch. Again, I could have stopped at 9 if I wanted to. I'll show you how we do that as well if you like. And per ID is now in the file. You see that there?
Okay, yeah.
Okay. So we've read the file. Now what it does is it has to convert it into the fields that we want to. And we're only going to convert the first 2 records. And the reason I like to do that up front is just that I can, again, have a look at the converted data and just see what it looks like. If I click on the field, all of these fields here that have got a slash are defaulted, so we don't have to worry about those because we're using this entry date for that, right? Now you notice that this date here is not the same as the date that we had on our file. Remember, our file had the same header title as this.
Okay.
This is it was a constant that we plugged into the recording. This here, 03/21/12, is the date that is on the file. We can open it up again just so you can see. That's this date over here. Okay, and I'm going to close this so I don't mess the file up any longer. So that's what came from the file. The other one was our hard-coded date. Maybe it was not a good idea to give it the same name. I should have given it a different name. But all those fields appear to be good now. So the next thing you do is you create what SAP calls a batch input session. All you have to do at this point is just generate this, and it creates a transaction with 2 transactions in, and we're going to run those loads. Okay, here it is. This is the session that's been created by SAP. So really, what it's done is it's said, okay, run this program that we've created, this LSMW program, and read the file and go through it, and it's got the 2 transactions. We're just going to process it. When you process a batch input session, you can process it in foreground or in background, or if you want to just display errors only. When you display errors only, you can monitor it. If the error comes up, the screen will display, it'll show you what went wrong, and then you can make the fixes. So let's process this guy. And really, all we're going to see now, I'm going to move this over here. This pick here is the action that's going to be done. So it's picking activate contractor. So there's my 7. How that X, remember that 7X came up?
Okay.
That was the pick. There's the position. Now it's fighting with me. It says there's no batch input data for screen P, and I'm not quite sure why. Looks good to me. I'm going to save you. Didn't like our transaction. I'm not sure why. So let's have a look and see what the problem was. The sequence of screens was recorded incorrectly. The transaction sent a screen that was not expected in the batch input session, and which therefore could not be supplied with data. Not quite sure what caused that, because the screen itself looked fine to me. Oh, remember we hired somebody in there? I didn't start with a blank screen.
Oh, okay.
And I believe that's what probably caused the problem. So all we're going to do is going to go through it again. Okay, we're going to start this again. No, I don't want to keep the batch input data. And exit. Go back into our LSMW. We have a converted file already, but I want to look at that converted data again just to make sure that I didn't miss anything obvious. Contractor load, PA40, start date, action for that was that. This comes into my next screen. Action type came from this. That's why that slash is there, so we know that it's a hire. The U1 action code. There's the position. Personnel number should be blank. Personnel area is defaulted. Here's my personnel, my employee name and address information, so that's all good over there. Personnel sub area is defaulted, organizational unit is defaulted, address information. From what I can see, we should be good. So my converted data is fine. What I need to do is create a brand new input session. I don't have to do anything else at this point. And let's run it again and see what it does. That was the one that went into error. And we'll process it again and see what happens. Pick. Activate contractor came up. I'm going to force this through and see what it does. Save it and see what it does. It's created a new employee number already. You see that there. No batch input data for this guy. Oh. I'm going to try and force it through and see what happens. Hey. Very confusing. None of this holds true. This really doesn't make any sense. It took that date fine. And all the fields, let's get out of this, it's not playing nicely. Here. So this is what you see here is all of the screens that come up in the transaction that we just ran. Action, employee data, position number, address. Is there anything we can do at this juncture is go back to the LSMW and see why it misbehaved. I really don't want to have to re-record the thing, but we can if we need to. No good reason why this didn't play nicely. It should have been a piece of cake.
Did we change it so that the that plan S, or so the one that was the position is pulling from the file?
Let's make sure. Is Yep.
Oh yeah.
That gets defaulted from this, so we don't even have to worry about that. I'm going to make this a constant. I don't think we need to, but I'm going to do it anyway. Pretty darn sure we don't need to. I'm going to make you a constant too. End date, I'm going to make. I don't believe it's going to make any difference though. We'll make 1231. The reason I'm not buying that is because let's test this. Conversion per that may be why. Remember we went in and changed that. I may not have regenerated the conversion program.
Oh, okay.
Because we went in and messed with it directly. If you there are a lot of great third-party tools that make this life this so much easier, but we really needn't. I don't think it's worthwhile looking at. They're also not they're not cheap. They're about 150 to 200,000 bucks.
Oh wow.
Yeah, they're not cheap at all. Don't have any translations or routines, so we're okay there. Let's read you one more time. We did not read it again. I don't think. Maybe we did. I think we just went straight to the conversion, didn't we? It's possible that that's where I may have messed up as well. So let's just... no, we did. We did do the read again because we got those additional records in there. Social, hire date, position, address. This here we don't care about. He looks good. This one looks a little bit weird. He just doesn't have a social, which we don't force, so we're okay there. 12, 13, 12, all those look good. The data looks fine. The fact that it converted was also... Now what we'll see when we look at the conversion, by the way, I didn't want to convert all the records. And the reason I only do 2 when I do my initial run is that I can run it in foreground, make sure that it behaves properly, and then I run the rest in batch, because otherwise you sit there and look at it forever. Table name, transaction. Now you see those constants that I put in are now coming up. You see that?
Yeah. Yeah.
This constant is not correct. It's not a U8 transaction, so I'm just going to make sure that I fix that. Sorry, that was my bad. That constant is not UA. It is contractor load activate. Oh, it was UA. Sorry, spot on. UA, reason, dates, no personnel numbers, everything else is defaulted. All right. See if it behaves properly this time. This is transaction SM37, the batch input. Only reason I bring that up is if you want to go back and look at everything, look at anything in the past, that will help you down the line. No batch input data for screen.
It didn't get... Did it not pick up the... Does the position have to come in first or something?
No, because we told them that the order of... position does come in first, but that comes in right here. And it should have come in from that file.
Can we look back at the LSMW? Because I wonder if there was a screen where it had the order of them, and I wonder if that has anything to do with it.
Have a look. You mean right up here?
Yeah.
So this is the entry screen, right? That's the very that's the PA40 screen where you it says select number 7 with that date. This guy here I don't like. We can maybe delete this.
Because it seems like that next section should be where it's filling in and with the position, and it seems like it's not getting to that.
See, this is, and I wonder if it's not because of this over here. We can't delete this though. See, this is something you can't even delete. This just is a follow one from the selection here. So the pick came in fine. Pick that option. This is peculiar. This should have just screamed through.
Yeah, what is that one at the top though, where it does that SAP? Like, what is that even trying to do?
What
the
this
SAP? Yeah.
program over here? What this does is it resolves what you've selected over here to get to the actual to the correct action.
Oh, okay. Huh.
It's just a little function module that resolves what you have to get to this action here. This here we had as a constant. I'm going to look at those constants again, but and the beauty of this tool is when you do the recording, it just dumps it all in nicely for you. The structures themselves, we gave it a name that made sense. The source fields are all defined correctly, except for these that we don't use, so it doesn't really matter. We could actually delete those. It would have no bearing on the. I could take those out right now, in fact. And then the mapping, which is where the rubber really hits the road. We've got the dates. The selection was 7. Begin date we've just forced as another constant just to be sure. End date we forced as a constant. My action, which is the UA, is there. This here, the only thing there that I can see that might be a problem is we didn't make it, it's a lowercase u. Reason code A was a new position. And it's possible that that's what fought us. That I didn't have I'm going to see if that didn't do it.
Okay.
Because it was a case U. Plans came from my table. Last name, this is all defined, derived from the position, so that's good. And we actually never got to that screen anyway. Regenerated our program again. Let's give it one more shot. Failing this, we're going to have to re-record it, and I really don't feel like doing that, but if we need to, we need to. Save. Specify files. Save. Let's just make sure that this is all defined correctly as well. Data from one table, commas separated file, field names at the start of the file. Using carriage return line feed to end it all, and it's all good. Back, save, assign files one more time. Save, and that just maps it back to where we were, right? So there's nothing magical about that. The read, this time we'll only read 9 records so we don't get that junk at the end. Usually, if something's really going to go sideways, the other thing with this, you'll see it here in the conversion. The conversion will either fail, or the records that you see in that converted file look bad. But yet these all look spot on. It's converted my dates to what they need to be. Okay, now we have the right reason code. The hell? It's all correct. Shit. And I did this in the development system, so I wonder. No, they would have fought us on something else. One of the things that I did do, let's just check that quickly. Position 14. Wasn't that the position we were trying to put in there? It's possible that may have caused a problem. So, because I have put logic in, I'll show you what I did there. I did specify a position that was subsequently occupied. Remember, this was the guy that I did that test.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if that didn't maybe cause the problem. 15, 16, 19, all the way to 21 now. That may have caused the problem because what I did, based on something that I noticed that happened with Cheryl, I'll show you what I did there quickly. But I can't believe it would have fought with me on that one. But it may have. Let's activate contractor. 10114. U1. See, that's the other thing. That's why I wasn't really buying this lowercase u1 because it's going to translate it anyway. See what I did there is I'm not allowing you to assign more than one person to a position.
Okay.
So I thought maybe that had caused the problem, but that only would have come up now. So I don't. That's not what caused the issue either. All right. I'm sorry to do this to you at this time, Dave.
No, that's all right.
Let's get out of the stuff that I don't want to be in any longer. Nope. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a brand new recording. We'll call it something else. We'll call it Contractor Load 1. Contractor. Oh, it's not going to like that one. Okay, so we've just done a brand new recording. This time per ID is in there. And you see that other spurious screen is no longer available. You notice that?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Okay. That was the reason that came up was it wasn't that. It was because of the search. Remember, I searched for the position.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So pick screen, UA, position defined, person data, position information, address. This here, this ENXT, that was when I did the yellow arrow past the screen that I didn't want to enter any data into it. Remember
Okay.
I did bypass that one. That was that one there. This is the other one that I did. And the eBack says go back to the beginning and start again. All right. Maybe we've got the problem licked this time. Cont load 1. Of course, we've got to do all this junk again, which is a bit of a pain in the neck, but it's not the worst thing in the world. Oh, it's got them all again. We've got all the information we need. Great. Oh, because we're just using a different recording. All the same, all the data is the same. So good news. Going around in circles over here. I think I am, right? None to be done. Oh, because we've got a new structure relationship. Remember we called this cont load 1? If I hadn't done this step, it would have gone back to the original cont load.
Oh, okay.
Here are all our fields. Now we've got to do all our mappings all over again, which is a bit of a nuisance, but that's okay. This became a constant. Selection X became a constant. And there was an X. Start date, we shouldn't have to worry about. I'm going to leave it blank because it should behave correctly. So should this. This becomes a constant. Position number came from a source field, right? Last name came from a source field. First name came from a source field. Personal ID. Personnel area, sub area, payroll area, job, org unit, street. Came from street. City came from city. Date came from region. Yep, we know. Postal code. Oops. Came from postal. Lunt came from Lunt. Date type is a constant. U1. U2. U3. U. Source field. Save. This we have to worry about. File. Same file. Read it one more time. Data looks just as good as it did before. Convert. Again, with those slashes are all the default fields, which should be just fine. Much more like it.
What is the thing about field plans, not an input field? What?
So it's talking about this field over here. which it says is not a default field because it came from the previous screen. So we can. No, I still don't like that. It's a little bit better.
At least it's getting further, so that's good.
Not happy. Run to the next one and see what it does. That's what it's supposed to do. You know what may have happened there, Dave, was I had that number defaulted again. I had an employee number in there.
Oh, okay.
And that's one thing. I keep on forgetting about it, and it's a big pain in the neck. I'm going to run the rest of them now quickly. We'll just start from... Now, remember, we did the first two. All we've got to do now is convert from record 3 onwards, right?
Yeah.
We went with 1 and 2. This time we'll make darn sure that employee number is clear before we do anything. Again, you don't really have to display these records. Once you've convinced that the data is good already, you should be okay. And when you process it in background, so you see there, this is where the problem lay. We had an employee number in there. When you execute in background, that doesn't come up. It comes in blank. And then usually I just hold the enter button down. I don't know. The back screen doesn't appear to be working.
Did it fill in that number again?
It did. Okay, so this is because of that back. We're almost there. If we look at that LSMW again, there was that back button.
Yeah.
It's not working nicely. I'm not exactly sure why, but I'll get to the bottom of it, and it'll be an easy enough fix. You see now it'll start again from scratch, working just fine. Bypass you. What the back screen is supposed to do is wipe that out and then keep on going. Got to figure out why that's not working. That's what that backspace is supposed to do. Again, wipe you out. It out. Okay. I'll check into that. It should have behaved. That /e back is supposed to do what it's supposed to wipe out the the employee number and start it from scratch. Now, one of the things you'll notice that I came into PPOME and you see none of those people that we hired into the system in the background are defined over here. The reason for that is because when you do it in background like that, it actually turns off the integration between OM and PA. What we need to do once we've done our load, there's a program we need to run. RHINT00. Now what that'll do, it'll take all of the, you see what it says here, transfer organizational assignment from PA to PD. What it does is, we'll run it in test first. It takes everything that is in info type 1 for all these individuals and transfers all that information over to the PD information with all the relationships that belong. So, and what it's telling us here is how many objects are impacted by that program. Now what it does is it creates another background session that has to be executed. So when we run this, we then need to go to no, it was in the right place. SM35. What did I not turn on here? Oh. Plan 1, create objects, create relationships, create customers of organization. That input session has been created, it says. To get to my batch input session. Oh. Looking for a session called contract alert. Now what you'll find is I've got a whole heap of those things defined. Okay. So I was searching for the old version of the contract alert job, so we can run this guy now. That will process in background. And then you can analyze that session as it goes. What it's doing is it shows that there are the 14 transactions that have to be created or that have to be executed. And as you click on this analysis button, as it progresses, it'll let you know. You'll be able to see how it's going. And this can take a little while. Okay, error in read session doesn't mean that anything went bad. It means it's processed all the transactions and there's nothing left to look at. So if I hit enter here again, that batch session will have gone away. So if you look at the organizational structure now, you see all those positions have been filled.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so when you're doing the batch input session, it only hits the PA database, and then when we run this RHINT00, it makes sure that all those relationships are now properly completed. There we go. So I'm going to look at that back thing. I'm not going to sit and try and debug it with you. It'll take a little while, but we'll make sure the personnel number is cleared, and then basically we know that we'll be able to just stream all those people through.
Okay.
And usually you do the first one in background, like in foreground, like I showed you, and then just the way I did the RHINT00 in background. It's something that with the volume that we have to do, it's something you'll click off. You'll kick off at 10 o'clock in the morning, and by 3 or 4, actually it'll be quicker than that. Probably by 2 in the afternoon, it'll be done. That's about. You'll probably process about 50,000 of them in 4 hours. And I think that was the volume we were looking at, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Sorry it took so long to get that recording together. I think it feels I wasted.
No, that's fine.
But now you know how LSMW works.
Yeah. No, that was interesting.
I've got a really good document on LSMW which I'll send to you as well.
Okay.
As well as the document on structural authorizations. Because I think that's going to be a key piece for it. What I can do, if you like, I'm just thinking about stuff from a security perspective. You can just try and sort out quickly. Let's see if I have I have a little function module that I've used in the past. Remember, I said you don't want people to default their access to all. You want the default to be so that people only see what they're supposed to see, so that they can't see the entire organization. You don't want people looking into, one day when you've got Lisa's personal data in there, you don't want people to be able to look at all that kind of stuff. So
yeah.
Just trying to think where I keep it. I use the same module. I've used it wherever I've gone. Just trying to think where I last set it up. While I'm here, I might as well save and send this to you. I don't know who the hell Norman Carl are, but they put a really good document together.
Yeah.
They covered very nicely though, and they give you some more context into how whole structural authorizations work. But it's essentially what you'll see here is what we had done with a little bit more. We don't use PPOM old, by the way. That's how old this document is. It's been around a while. But the meat of the document kicks in right around here from point 5 onwards.
Okay.
It also talks to InfoType 105. You'll recognize the screen already here, OOSP, where we created the structural authorization profile. Talks a little bit to those status vectors in depth that we talked about in the past. And then don't worry about InfoType 1017. We're not going to use that. Maybe we should talk a little bit about this. Something that maybe we can use. So there's this notion of position-based security. And what position-based security allows you to do is, if I go into your position, for example, let's use you as an example. Yeah, we can do it here. Tell me if this is something you think is worthwhile applying. So you fall under information technology, I believe. What you can do is you can assign roles to a position rather than to a specific individual. One of the nice things about this is, so I can say your position, right, gets profiles. I'm not going to work with profiles, sorry. Your position gets a specific role. I'll show you what it does. So we're going to do a search for, and we're going to give you the HRIS team role. We're going to assign it to your position. It's nice in that you don't have to then, when you create somebody's user ID, let's say, let's say you moved up in the world and you got a sidekick who came into your scene into this position, and he needed to get the same roles as you just had after you vacated it, right? What this will do is, so the relationships have been created now. So that position now has that business role. I'm going to run a little program now, which you can schedule to run on a daily basis. And we're going to run it specifically for your position right now. What this is going to do, it's going to resolve the roles that I've assigned to your position to your user ID. So long story short, what it does is it looks at the roles that have been assigned to the position, looks at the person that occupies that position, assigns the roles to the user ID that are assigned to that employee through PA 105. Okay, so really it's done what we need to do at this point. D. Van Buren, the role has been created and it's been added to the HRS team. So can you see how it's gone from position, from role to position to your user ID? I didn't realize you were D. Van Buren 1 in SAP. Is that correct?
Yeah, I must have two logins then, because I do log in with D. Van Buren, so.
Okay, so let's have a look at your record now, because that's kind of interesting. PA 20. This is actually kind of a good thing in some ways, because so there's a Dave and a David, that's why. Okay, so David Van Buren. D. Van Buren, so that's actually you. And then there's Dave Van Buren. This one here, the imposter. Dr. Dave Van Buren. Oh, I remember hiring you into that position as a test.
Yeah, that it does kind of ring a bell now. So.
Okay, Dr. David Van Buren with that user ID. Okay, all right. So now, I don't think ever had anything assigned to him, but let's have a look at, so I'm going to go into SU01 for D. Van Buren 1. Does not exist. That's why that thing came up with the yellow. Okay, good. Let's find you. Let's find the real Dave Van Buren. Will the real Dave Van Buren please stand up? This is the real Dave Van Buren. Okay. You're sharing the position of CIO with Mark. Okay. Okay, so this will be an interesting one. So I think I've shown this to you in the past as well, the PPOME, but once I've got that position, I can go up to the top here, go to Detail Object, Enhanced Object Description, and what that'll take me to is the actual position. that we're working at. Did it do that? Double click first. It's got to be, this has got to be showing before it'll take you in there. Go to detail object, enhanced object description. Take me to here. Now I'm going to create the same relationship that I did with your position. Right, so A007. Is described by a role, and we had BE HRIS team. B007, sorry. Okay, so if I look at the roles, at the relationships now that are assigned to this position, that position now has that role. Okay. I'm going to run ProFlow again. 38, F8. It's important that you actually specify and hit enter when you're looking for a position. Otherwise, it remembers what you're doing before and it was looking for an organizational unit. We'll run just for that position. We're not going to do it in test. We're going to assign standard authorizations and PD authorizations. The other thing that you can do is, and I realize now that I'd run the previous one in test. If you generate a new user, if you click on this button, it'll actually create a new user ID for that person as well. So I'm going to run it for this position first. Okay, so can you see what's happened now to D. Van Buren? I've assigned, and to Mark Mathias actually, I've assigned the HRIS role to both of you guys, and it's got a nice little green traffic light. Now I'm going to go back to that other, to Dr. David Van Buren's position, information technology development, this one here, 25. I'm going to do the same thing. Right, I'm going to assign standard authorization and PD authorization, and I'm going to generate the new role, of course this time without the test session in place. And we created one, but I didn't define some of the information that was required for that new test position, right? With no password defined and no initial defined. So it wasn't able to actually create that because I didn't tell it what to do. But let's go back now, sorry, to SU01. And we'll look at your role. And what you'll see, you see we're going to have something that's doubled up here. HRIS team that is in white and HRIS team that is grayed out that you can't edit. You see that?
Oh, okay.
Okay. This one here was generated by ProFlow that we just ran. It assigned the role to you from the position. So it's been generated through that role, and of course all of the roles that belong to that have been added to that as well. So everything that you see here that's in gray has been added in by virtue of the fact that we gave you the HRIS team role we assigned the HRIS position or HRIS role rather to your position rather than directly to your user ID. And what ProFlow does then is it resolves, like I said, from position to person, looks at you for type 105 to see what your user ID is, and then actually assigns the roles directly to your user ID based on the position that you occupy.
Okay.
So that's how position-based security works. It's kind of nice in this, especially if you're in an organization where people move around all the time. If somebody moves into a new position, a new finance position, and they've moved from accounts receivable to accounts payable, for example, the moment they occupy the new position, they get the new roles that belong to that position, and you don't have to worry about messing with user IDs all the time.
That does seem like a good way to do it. So
now, what we would need to do, if that's an approach that you want to take, it's also something that you don't want HR to mess with, because it's a security role, right? So it's typically something that it's a relationship that you want HRIS to have, or the IT department to have access to, and not the HR department to have access to.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yep.
Again, you do want to, but at the same time, so you don't want, not at the same time. So you don't want the HR users, the Cheryls of this world, to be able to go into a position and say, oh, I want to give them this new role. Because really what you're doing then is, you have those, you're not a publicly traded company, so you don't really have SOX issues, but there are segregation of duties issues that you would have to face or be aware
Okay.
of.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The position-based security is actually rather nice, especially in a company that's either growing where people's roles change all the time, or where you've got a whole lot of new hires and what have you. So anyway, that was a little bit of a departure from the standard, but that's how position-based security works, and it's in that document that I just sent you as well.
Okay. Yeah, I'll read through that. So.
Okay, so my homework is to make sure that I can get that employee number to empty out when we start the hire, when we do the load, and I think we've got the mass load pretty much nailed. So going back to the processes that we'd have to go through in order to get all those positions, as you can see, we're going to have to spend a lot of time in the organizational structure creating those positions and then mapping them back to the employees when we do the load. So typically the process that I take, so these are our guys, right? You know that they're all crowdsourcers. And we still have to make some further determination with the user community as to how we define that structure, right? Because in one of the last sessions that we had, when we were looking at the organizational structure, if you recall, when we looked at the contractors, we started going into a fairly detailed structure, not so much with these guys, but I think it was with the linguists, right? We had the phoneticians, and within the phoneticians, we had the French guys and what have you. We had it by language, and then we talked about maybe even going into more detail with French Canadian, Moroccan Canadian, whatever. So the going from this to determining the positions that they have to take is going to be no trivial matter.
Yeah, I see that. Huh.
So if we open up your large file here again, I think for the most part they were English US, right?
Yeah, I think this file was all ENUS. I think there might have. I don't remember if this one had ESUS. The other file probably would have had. I don't know. I think there's maybe 15 or 20 languages.
Okay, so let's go back to your email again here.
Yeah, look at the other that S. That one.
Okay, so you've got AREG. I don't know what this is off the top of my head. I guess Arabic Egyptian.
Yeah. Yep.
So here it seems to me, and maybe this is where we can start as an exercise. We've got 135 Arabic Egyptian crowdsources. So you know what? It may not be that scary. Let's just try this for shits and giggles, Dave. So under crowdsourcing, now this is also something that one of the things I mentioned earlier is I don't know that you want to spend a lot of time doing this in Q just to have to redo it in development, but we can certainly do one cruise as an exercise. So I'm going to take crowdsourcing into PPOME over here as my focal organizational unit. And within that, I'm going to create, I'm in display again. Within that, I'm going to create and we'll call it exactly what we had it over here. Arabic, Egyptian, Arabic, Egyptian. This is how you did it, right? Yeah. So language, country. I think I mentioned this to you before. When I want to create an abbreviation, I just drop all the vowels, and it usually does an okay job.
Yeah.
Giving you a title, an abbreviation that makes sense. So what I'm suggesting to you guys is that you take your locale and your language in your locale as an initial thing, and then the definition beneath that. So really what we need to do then is we've got to create, when I did the filter, what is it, 135 of them?
Yeah, I think that sounds right.
Turn the filter off and turn it on again, I guess. I think 135 was the number.
Yeah, I think that's right.
So what we'll do is we'll take a copy of this crowdsourcer position here. Just make one copy of it. And the reason I do that is just to make sure that I have all of and then I can just drag it into there, and then we can be a little bit smarter with the naming. Maybe we call this Arabic Egyptian crowdsourcer. So that's a position title, right? And the job is still crowdsourcer, right? They all do the same thing.
Yeah. You want to? Can you make that AREG?
Oh, sorry, that's a typo on my part. Sorry, AREG. Oops, I'll get it right eventually. And then we're going to make, in this case, let's make a few extra. Let's make 139 copies. So 139 copies. So you've got 5 spare. Now this will take a little while to build. And it's going to start with 122 onwards, right? That's the first position that we created. We know it's going to start with 122 onwards. So what we can actually do over here already is we can say, okay, you are going to start with 2000 122. I never know how to do this.
Yeah, no. I think if you drag it down, it somehow will number it, but I don't remember.
You do it either with an Alt or a Control, and it can never remember what. 2000 123. Although I do know that if I do this and then take you together and keep on going, no, it doesn't. Okay, it's either Shift Control maybe, or you can do it the old-fashioned way.
Yeah.
Just wrong.
I think because of the filtering, they weren't all together.
Oh, okay. Or we'll have to just do that from a sorting perspective first. 2000.
Yeah. We could certainly sort by the title first.
Right. 20000244. Anyway, you get my drift.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. So now we've built. Those have all been built at this point. And of course, it's very important every time you do this, you save it. But taking that approach, building the structure is probably not going to be that difficult.
Okay.
Right? Does that approach make sense? I think it will work.
Yeah. I think so.
So really, it's a case of going back to this puppy here. Sort by job title. Hey, why did? Oh, because I'm filtering still. No, what have I done? Okay, so we stopped with the Egyptians at that point. However, there's no reason to say, now that I think of it, right, that we couldn't even do this. As long as it's a focused exercise, right, and we just go in the order in which we built this. This leaves no room for blanks, though, the way I created the first one. But that's 5,000 numbers generated in this little time. And then we would just start with the Egyptians, move on to the German, Austrian guys, which is also a big fan, the Swiss guys, the Germans. I mean, this won't take a lot of time, Dave.
Yeah, it doesn't seem too bad. So.
Now, the only thing that we will need to do, for example, these folks here, where we don't have all the information that is required,
well, yeah, for those, I mean, I've gone back. I'd mentioned to Colin and Amy that basically the problem is this data is coming from two different sources, and the ones where they're blank are ones where there wasn't a match. And I mean, I think there was only about 120 out of 5,000 or something, and I think they were just going to go through and have somebody kind of match up, because I think I was matching up on like email or something, and they were going to have somebody go back in and kind of help with the matching.
So these guys are going to be.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is the double byte?
Yeah, that's going to be an issue, because I'm pretty sure that we didn't install double byte character set support here.
Okay.
So you may want to bring up with Mark. I mean, that's quite a big deal. The DBCS thing.
Okay, so they would just have to put. I mean, I can probably just ask them to go back in and put, an ASCII version of the address or something.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like it happens too often.
No, there weren't that many. So I mean, I see 2 or 3 maybe. 1, 2. It's probably not the end of the world. Yeah, I wouldn't go through the grief of going through a double byte character set implementation. It's painful. Here's another one. Yeah, you probably have 15 or 20 at the end of the day. But yeah, that's going to be something you just need to let them be aware of. Because DBCS is a tough implementation. Oh, there's a little bit more. But even given this information here, right, where we have the majority of the guys defined over here, we could still use this logic that we've just worked through over here, and they will still have their positions assigned. When we do the load, you'll have a bunch of guys in, a bunch of random positions that are going to be unoccupied. And then we can load them as time permits.
Okay.
So I would say just the crowdsourcing piece, we'd probably be able to do a full load in the space of a day of all the guys you've got over here in this file. So that's not the worst news for the day. Is there anything else you want to go over, Dave?
No, because I had wanted to not go too far, beyond like 3 or so. So
okay.
I think what we've covered is pretty good. And then what we can do is we can pick up the other stuff with Cheryl, and then if if there, I know you had kind of a list, and if there's stuff that we still need to cover, we could always plan on doing that sometime next week. So.
Right. One of the things I'd mentioned to Mark, and he never really got back to me on it, is I did offer to do some of the documentation if it was going to be something that you felt was needed. Should we just hold that off until we get it?
Yeah, let me because I think Mark was going to be back I believe on Thursday. I had a call from him, but I didn't get a chance to get back with him this morning because I think he's still on the West Coast. But yeah, let me ask him where that stands because I know Cheryl and I were going to try to go through and based on creating positions and creating jobs and all that, and get some documentation in place as well. But yeah, let me see what Mark thinks about that. So.
Okay. Yeah, and I'll make sure that we get this LSMW to come back with a clean employee number so we can rock on ahead with a good clean load.
Okay.
All right, sir.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate all that, and you have a happy New Year and all that. So.
You too, Dave.
Okay. Well, thanks, Rob.
All right. Cheers.
Bye.